but they know comfort and warmth and family.
Together, tonight, as you say, Harry is expected to arrive now. But let's just talk about the coming hours and the coming days. We know, because of the statement, that King Charles and Queen Consort will be on their way back to London pretty shortly. They'll be back, we're told, tomorrow. But what about the body of the
There will be a period of national mourning. I mean, there has been a plan in place for some considerable time, possibly to be fine-tuned now that we are where we are. But the King and his Queen Consort, as you say, will travel back to London tomorrow. They will visit all, or the King will visit all 4 home nations. There will be that period of national mourning up until the funeral. In terms of the Queen's body, it will remain here for now, but that will be moved to St Giles Cathedral, just up the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, and thereafter to Buckingham Palace.
Okay, James, thank you very much indeed. And indeed, the body will be taken first to Holyrood House, I think, and then along the Royal Mile to St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh. And then the plan is for the Queen's body to be transported by train. The Royal Train will take the Queen from Waverley Station down to London. But as I say, at the moment, the family, most of the family have gathered at Prince Harry is on his way to Dermot, and here at Balmoral, just a sense of overwhelming sadness.
Mark, indeed, and that is reflected here at Buckingham Palace. There is no doubt that this is a major moment in the history of our United Kingdom. Indeed, in the history of the world, such a long-serving and influential monarch passing after 70 years on the throne. I just wonder if we can take in some of the scenes here of the crowds gathering at Buckingham Palace, because they are flooding in here to absorb the enormity of what has just happened here today. Thousands of people now. When I first arrived here during the course of the afternoon, there was that brief statement from Buckingham Palace about the deterioration in the Queen's health, and that her doctors were concerned about her, but she was remaining at Balmoral as those members of the royal family gathered to be at her side. Well, then the sad news came at about 6:30 this evening, and since then the crowds are flooding in, as you can see there, quietly absorbing the situation, quietly, I imagine, paying their respects as well, and taking in the symbolism of what that flag flying at half-mast tells us. Right slap bang in the centre of the roof of Buckingham Palace, fluttering in the light breeze of a rather gloomy September day, reflecting the mood of so many people here. And behind me in Green Park, which that's Buckingham Palace, hundreds of people making their way down to take in the scenes, to say that they came to Buckingham Palace to see for themselves, to read for themselves the short formal statement which is posted on the gates of royal palaces on the major occasions, and there's none more major than this, the simple statement saying, as Her Majesty would have wished, I'm sure, that the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon, posted up there on the gates. And the King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. And Rhiannon Mills, our royal correspondent, joins me. And Rhiannon, I'm sure you're taking in these scenes as well. It is quite something just seeing the people silently, respectfully, just wanting to somehow be part of this, to say that they were present at the passing of a monarch, a much loved monarch, the longest reigning monarch, well, not just in our history, but in just about every country in the world's history. I know there are a few that served a little bit longer. Quite extraordinary scenes, Rhiannon.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stress that her age, 96 years old, a remarkable age to live until, but it shouldn't detract from the enormity of this moment. Most of us can't remember a time when she wasn't queen, and she was a woman who was recognised not just in this country but right around the world, and held in such high esteem and respect by members of the public, politicians, religious leaders. Everywhere she went, crowds would come out to see her. And what is wonderful is when you look back at footage from those early days of her reign, where literally hundreds of thousands of people would come out onto the streets to see this glamorous young queen and her handsome Prince Philip, alongside her. And yes, her look and her demeanour, and the world changed during her 7 decades as queen, and yet largely it was deemed that she never put a foot wrong. And I think also when you consider public figures that we see today, it's often about their brand, it's about them, it's about their personality. And yet, one person once said that the Queen, she had the conviction to be boring. She wanted to keep herself private at times. It wasn't about her, it was about her role. I think we will see a couple of things play out over the next couple of days. Of course, huge constitutional change. Some may describe it as a constitutional earthquake as we feel the reverberations of what has happened. We now automatically have a new king, and it's literally been confirmed in the last few moments that the new king will be known as King Charles III. Now, at home you might be thinking, well, of course he would be, but actually when it comes to a change in reign, the new sovereign is able to choose a different name, and of course we've seen that throughout history. So instead of being King Charles, he could have chosen any of his other names, which are Philip, Arthur or George. However, we now know that he will be King Charles III. He also takes on other titles, so Head of the Commonwealth, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Supreme Governor of the Church of England. So we have the constitutional change, we have the change in head of state, but I think what we're also going to see, and I think you're already probably seeing there at Buckingham Palace, you will have a greater sense of this, is a sense that people want to come together, a collective sense of shock and mourning. It was, after all, only 2 days ago that we saw her still carrying out her constitutional duties. And as Liz Truss said in her speech, there are going to be difficult days ahead where communities will come together, just as we have done right throughout her reign, to mark those milestone moments, to pay our respects to what was a life devoted to service.
Indeed, Rhiannon, thank you for that. And I would echo those thoughts in terms of what people here are coming to witness and to experience. There's a huge sense, obviously and clearly, of the end of an era, but also a little bit of trepidation about what lies ahead. We know that we are in very difficult times, both nationally and internationally, and at this very moment, the rock, as Liz Truss referred to, the very spirit of Great Britain, the rock upon which modern Britain was built, has passed. And in just one short week, we have had the changing of a Prime Minister, and now the passing of our longest-serving head of state, the rock upon which Britain was built. Alistair Bruce, our law commentator, joins me now, and Alistair, just on that confirmation now that the King will be King Charles III, and Camilla, Queen Consort.
Yes, it's a moment of continuity and a moment of great sadness. I think for a nation recognising that the Queen is now dead, it must be a great shock for the new king that instantaneously, while he fathoms the loss of his mother, there will be red boxes to be dealt with. There will be the work that the Queen didn't quite finish yesterday. And he must now continue the function of government as head of state immediately. And that process and continuity of playing the role as monarch is one where everybody now will look to King Charles III for decisions on everything. All the needs and requirements of the days ahead will be placed for him to make decisions on. And it is a very busy changing, and the Queen referred to it herself when her father died back in 1952, that suddenly everybody looked to her, and she didn't necessarily feel prepared for it. And yet in her 71st year as monarch, she became so comfortably adept, and with that glinting eye when she was waiting for the arrival of her 15th Prime Minister in the drawing room of Balmoral Castle, she wanted to make the photographer waiting feel at ease and made a charming comment to him. And I think that's always been the nature of how she's done this role, is she's always managed to put herself last and to approach it with great humility. And she's given that torch now to the new king, who must take on so much, and yet at the same time, at this moment, with his brothers and sister and other members of the family, are recognising the loss of their second parent. And somebody sent a message to me now that, you know, lots of people feel they've lost a parent. And that is the nature of monarchy. It reminds us, because we get to know the monarch almost as though she's a personal friend. And when she goes, it's like losing somebody, and it echoes a loss in one's own family. And I think that those people gathering now outside Buckingham Palace, each of them with their own personal thoughts, they come for myriad reasons. And a head of state has to encompass myriad people with myriad thoughts. And Elizabeth II did that. And now the new king must take on that responsibility and be the figurehead around which the political process will, of course, dance.
Alistair, thank you very much indeed. Well, obviously we're getting reaction from political leaders, not just here, but throughout the world. I believe that we are about to hear, or shortly to hear, from the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. We heard not too very long ago from the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, in Downing Street, who reflected upon the fact that just 2 days ago she was at Balmoral with Her Majesty the Queen, discussing becoming the 15th Prime Minister under Queen Elizabeth's reign. 2 days later she was paying tribute to her on behalf of the nation, expressing how devastated she was, and that what a personal inspiration Her Majesty had been to Liz Truss in particular, through her devotion to duty. Well, as I say, we heard that not too very long ago from the Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Let's listen now to the leader of Her Majesty's opposition. It's very strange to say of His Majesty's opposition, Sir Keir Starmer.
Of a remarkable sovereign. It is a deep private loss for the royal family, and our first thoughts are with them at this time. The nation shares in their grief. Queen Elizabeth II created a special, personal relationship with us all. A relationship based on service and devotion to her country. Nobody under the age of 70 has known anything other than Queen Elizabeth II on the throne. For the vast majority of us, the late Queen has been simply the Queen. The only Queen. Above all else, our Queen. As we mourn her loss, we should also treasure her life, our longest serving and greatest ever monarch. Above the clashes of politics, she stood not for what the nation fought over, but what it agreed upon. In crisis, she reassured us, reminding us that we are all part of something that stretches back through time, a symbol of the best of us. I saw it for myself when I led the Crown Prosecution Service. Every time I had the privilege to meet the late Queen, she would ask the most searching questions because she wanted to understand the lives and struggles of her people. And as Britain changed rapidly around her, this dedication became the still point of our turning world, an example that taught us that whatever the challenges we face, the values of service always endures. And the obvious love the late Queen displayed for Britain, the British people gave back in return. That is why there is such an outpouring of grief across the nation today, as there is across the Commonwealth, to which the late Queen was so devoted. Around the world, people are united in mourning and united in celebrating her life. This togetherness is a reminder of what she achieved, a reminder of our shared values, values which I know will be upheld by her beloved son Charles, our new king. So as our great Elizabethan era comes to an end, we will honour the late Queen's memory by keeping alive the values of public service she embodied. For 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II stood as the head of our country, but in spirit, she stood amongst us.
Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader of his